Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, or I should say good morning. Welcome to another segment of Asaph Cafe. MCAT has changed their hours, so we're taping a little earlier today.
Yep.
And probably for good, I guess, for now. So on my left, we have Mr. Scott Ranf. He is the host of Wake Up Missoula.
Hello.
And affectionately, our aging rocker on my further left. And we're going to do something a little unusual, perhaps comical and different. We're going to have a debate today, but not in a political sense. This is in a science fiction sense. And we're going to discuss which is a better series, Star Trek with Willam Shatner, the original, or Star Trek The Next Generation with, what is that actor's name? Patrick Stewart.
Patrick Stewart, yes.
Yeah, and there's other things if you guys elaborate on, like there's Enterprise with Scott Bakula.
Oh, yeah.
And there's Deep Space Nine.
Yes.
And Voyager.
Yes.
But the main debate is the original versus The Next Generation.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's been a hot topic for science fiction fans since Star Trek The Next Generation debuted, because some people love Next Generation more, some people love the original more, and there's a big, debate.
And then it's a generational thing too, because,
It is, really. It is.
Thing.
I never thought about that,
Well, yeah, because the original Star Trek came out before your time, obviously.
Yes.
So you would be used to The Next Generation, whereas Emmett would...
I was raised on the old one,
Yeah, and another thing too, before we start this debate, they didn't have the special effects when the original series came out because they didn't have the technology. But Gene Roddenberry, I had heard that when they remastered the series, you've seen some of the remastered.
A little bit.
Yeah,
but it's
they're
the only thing they show nowadays on television, if they do show them.
Yeah, well, Gene Roddenberry did get to see some of the remastered episodes before he passed away, and he said that's what he had in mind. They just didn't have the technology at that time.
Yeah.
So I wanted to lay all that groundwork out on this debate here.
But
and,
first,
okay, go ahead.
We must pray over food. Heavenly Father, bless our food and our time together in Jesus' name.
Amen. So, Scott, since you're the youngest one, I'll let you start.
Wait, I have a question, Scott, before we do. Do you need to get anything from your office, like food or snacks?
I took care of everything.
Oh, that's good, that's good. I'm just still on my third cup of coffee, kind of like the Gordon Lightfoot song.
All right. I will start with an opening argument about why The Next Generation is better. All right. So, for many years in the 90s, this Star Trek The Next Generation was basically stood on its own for a lot of things.
Yeah, it started in 1987. The pilot premiere, Journey to Farpoint.
Yeah, that was the Journey to
1987, yeah.
All right, let me talk. Okay. So, for The Next Generation, it was basically revitalization, reimagining of the original series, as well with like a bigger budget, more storyline, just like an overall longer season. And I think a lot of the things about The Next Generation was like, I know it definitely did have the shaky first season trying to find its voice.
Yeah.
It relied very much on unitards, very much on basing a lot of their stories on the original as well, because there was a couple episodes where aliens didn't look like aliens; they were just like another humanoid type.
I know.
And then, of course, by the time they get to the next season, things really started picking up for The Next Generation.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting take, because for The Next Generation, it kind of started off rough, but then it kind of came into its own after a while. And you have such rich characters which had their own little arcs along the storylines as well. And of course, they always throw a couple episodes to people who you least expect from the series, not just relying too much on the main cast, which I thought was really good, because it kind of like added characters throughout. So, and then you would have more like guest star appearances from people to have more of an impact in the episode.
Yeah.
But then, of course, as the series went on, it became more and more popular, and a lot of people were just wanting more. So the nice thing about The Next Generation is by the end of the series, people just wanted more. But now I'm going to start attacking the Star Trek, the original. So during the Star Trek, it was great for its time. It was just like, it was original. It was like no one expected this kind of series to do so well. And then, of course, like any series, people kind of lost taste. Like any, back in the 60s, you had your spies, you had cop dramas. Like it was the flavor of the month, and especially those times, people were so just like, if anything just slightly went down in ratings, they were canceled.
Yeah.
Straightforward. So for the time, Star Trek didn't last as long because it had a very shaky last season before it just ended up pulling
that's
it.
true.
It was more like the original series was canceled.
Yeah.
While the Star Trek Next Generation had a chance to have a series finale. So in a lot of ways, a lot of people really cultured the Next Generation, and also the Next Generation also spanned a bunch of spin-offs. And I don't remember that the original series didn't have their spin-off until like 20 years later.
Well, actually, they did have a spin-off that was the animated Star Trek. Did you ever see that? I'm kind of iffy on the animated
everything
one.
made it, every show that was in the 60s had some kind of animation feature, or they guest starred on Scooby-Doo in some ways.
Exactly.
So that's my opening argument, and feel free.
Well, the only thing is, just on the outset, I like Star Trek The Next Generation a lot more than when it first came out. When I was 18, I was going, where's the action? Why is this such a psychological thing of being on a couch with a psychiatrist? This is all just political correctness and a bunch of yuppies thing. Maybe it's just that I'm older. I'm 38. I like it a lot more. I've seen it on BBC America. They cut out too much on BBC America. They cut out too much of the next gen, of the important stuff. So it's an acquired taste.
Mm-hmm.
But
that's an interesting take, acquired taste for the older people. I would think the Next Generation would be an acquired taste.
It is. You have to see it enough times and maybe grow a little bit as a person. There are better episodes. It did get better as it went along.
Yeah, I agree with that. Scott's right. I did.
Yep. And an argument of that, a lot of ways I can say that Next Generation was very heavily on, like making people really think about what the right thing to do. And there's always a third option to think about. While a lot of times the original series, they always like had they had like a formula in a lot of ways. They went to a planet, Red Shirt died. They're just like, what's going on? And then it's like, then they had to find a way to get off the planet.
Yeah.
And usually resorted to a lot of like punching and throwing rocks at lizard monsters and all that stuff.
And that's my great argument for why I love the first one.
Well, let's talk about that lizard monster. That was called a Gorn.
That
as
was
you probably
fantastic.
know. And the premise of that...
the rubber lizard monster.
That was one of my favorite episodes.
the premise of that... the Starfleet folks had invaded this territory and colonized it without realizing that it already belonged to the Gorn people. And so the Gorn people thought it was an invasion. They didn't realize, so they fought back at the beginning of the episode where they destroyed that Cestus community.
Outpost, yes.
But I think that a lot of things...
And that's what started that.
And I think that a lot of things with both Next Generation and the original series, even a lot of the more modern series nowadays, is that makeup effects and special effects have improved. And I think that's one of the things we should actually really take out of it and kind of remain about what it means to like being a story and like character development, all the stuff. Because if you look at the Next Generation now, a lot of the creatures and monsters look terrible.
I still think they look great myself. It's hard to do special effects, but my thing is, with the first series, with Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock, there was drama and action. You were afraid. I mean, for this time, it is cheesy. I mean, sweating just because it's so cheesy. But there was real action and adventure.
Well, yeah, it is cheesy
and
by today's
dramatic
standards
fighting
with the technology,
and But you felt in real danger, like if there were a whole bunch of space battles and the ship was going to be destroyed, and Scotty kept saying, "We can't hold it anymore, Captain. I can't change the laws of physics. You've got to give me 30 minutes." And in only a minute, the ship was going to blow up. And how are we going to get out of this? There was real danger. And dun 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 music. The Next Generation, while it had its action, it was so focused on data learning humor or data learning social interactions. It was like political correctness, like something a psychiatrist would make. Okay, here, Emmett. Here's how to interact in society. Here's how to focus and get along well in groups.
I really like. I have an argument against that. In a lot of ways, like Data and Spock are very similar because they were trying to become more human. A lot of ways, and for Spock, it was more just kind of like subtle humor type stuff.
Right.
It was just like, well, I'm only human.
Exactly.
Kind of thing. And then Data, I think it was better for Data because he wasn't human. He wasn't half human. He didn't have that advantage of being human. He was basically used as a platform to understand our own humanity.
And that's good.
And I think that was like in its own right.
That is good, but they took the political correctness too far. Like a lot of it was just walking along the corridors and talking about how do I socially interact with the crew in an appropriate way and get along in groups. I want to see the action. I want to see the lasers. I want to feel frightened by a Gorn creature. I don't want Data saying, I wonder how I can react to this in an appropriate way. Can the crew, like... Do you remember the episode, I've seen so many episodes of Next Gen, where this Lieutenant Barclay was angry with the crew, so he resolved his anger issues on the holodeck. No joke, and then he resolved it. I wanted to interact better with the crew. Now, I'm just tearing out my hair. Where are the aliens? Where is the Space Force? Where is the action?
No.
The Next Generation, sometimes it provided action as a treat, like with the Borg. The Borg episodes were some of my favorites, because they had what I wanted, action and real danger.
Yeah.
But the rest of it, sometimes they were just traveling in known space, and it was so much interaction. And the synthahol, that drove me crazy. After fighting the Gorn, don't you need a good stiff drink of whiskey? Why synthahol? You need it. Captain Kirk always had a stiff drink.
You can't get on TV having promoting real alcohol too, you know, and stuff like that. So it's probably why they had that.
Yeah, I mean, especially in
the old series,
late
they
80s,
did,
early 90s.
Yeah.
Like the hyper violence that came through the 80s, like RoboCop and all that stuff.
Yes.
A lot of people in television were like saying, like the FCC, like through its time, it was probably more risky for its time than most other series, because you had the episode where you see Commander Kirk getting speared right through the chest.
Yes.
Which is what it kind of inspired him to be a little more hard.
Yeah, and that was a good episode. That was a very good episode with a lot of fighting. That was an excellent one.
Well, it doesn't have to be all about fighting. That's the thing, is that's why the Next Generation works so well, is because it kind of gives you another scope. You say you can't solve problems with violence.
Well, that's true, and I like that, and I like part of that. But what about the entertainment? We want to be entertained as well as informed on the topics of the day.
But they also had many different layers and many different levels.
That's true.
It wasn't just about one thing. Yes, it had violence when it needed violence.
Yeah.
But it was necessary violence.
Yeah.
And then there was drama. You had the drama. You had you had children who their parents died in an accident. And
I
then
remember
you had
that one.
Then you had Captain Jean-Luc Picard. He had to figure out how he was going to help these kids. It's like he's never had kids of his own.
Yeah.
He was always kind of like the bachelor. He was a lifelong bachelor because his crew was his family.
Exactly.
And he kind of denied himself that kind of thing. That kind of fall in the similarities between him and Kirk, because they were more about taking care of their immediate family on the Enterprise, while most of everybody else was hitching and just having kids on their own.
That is true. I mean, I do like that kind of the plot and characters, like the one with the Packlets, those kind of people that kind of had this technology but didn't know how to use it exactly. That was a good one. And
with any series, you always start off really with a pow. Like in the very first couple seasons of the Next Generation, it was just figuring things out and just everything. And then of course later on they started doing more cop-out episodes where it was just or it was just oh, let's get more introspective. Let's concentrate on this one person for the whole entire episode.
Yeah, like Data's Day. Data's Day was a terrible episode. Do you remember that one where Data, the whole hour was learning about humanity and his relationship with other people? That drove me nuts.
Well, the thing about the original Star Trek, it dealt with cultural issues of the time. They had the first interracial kiss, obviously, but it wasn't in a romantic sense.
It was Kirk just being Kirk.
Well, see, what happened was they were controlled. They were controlled by these creatures that could make them do whatever.
That was a very good one.
There was a really weird episode from the original series where they met the original gods, like Zeus. It's
that was a good one. Yeah.
It was so weird. It was
Zeus was outdated.
Forced perspective made him really big, and then
he was just a little outdated. He didn't realize that the mankind had evolved and gotten into the future, so he was considered outdated. He was trying to act
that
like
was a
Earth.
good one. That was.
And then of course they always bring today's folk into the future. It was they were frozen in time, and they just kind of have the perspective of the person.
No, that was a good episode. I liked that one. That was a very good one. Next Generation. You mean the one where they were suspended in cryogenic freeze because they had medical issues, and then they had to that was a good one. I'll grant it that. But then again, like I said, they miss opportunities. When they had that first thing with the Romulans, they could have had an excellent space battle for about 10 minutes, riveting you on your feet, and just have the Enterprise almost destroyed. Then the Romulans could said, and That would have been more interesting
I
than
think,
almost.
well, they were at war, well, like near at war with the Romulans for like ever.
Yeah, I know,
That was
I
like
know.
that was their. I guess that actually brings me to my next argument is the Klingons. It's
Yes.
like, because it was always like political trial, and there's like whether or not there's going to be a fight that broke out that's going to have a big war happening. And
That was good.
And it was really interesting to see like there's some species out there that you cannot negotiate with. Kind of like the
Exactly.
Borg. There's like you can't resist. Resistance is futile. And I think it was really interesting when you had the Klingon. What's his name? Worf.
Yes.
Worf. His character development, because he is full Klingon, raised by humans. He had like a quarter Klingon kid, like the woman he was with.
Alexander,
Yes, and then the dynamic between a father and son, what it means to be like either a Klingon father or like a human father.
Yeah, and sometimes that drove me crazy because that was too politically correct. But I liked.
Well,
the fact
it was
that-
mostly about like about tradition versus traditional values versus I don't know, just like modern values, because the Klingon had a very interesting traditional system where it was all based on violence. Like,
yeah,
a lot of their
exactly.
stuff
And
was,
honor
like,
and violence. Violence and honor. And like I said, they missed. Do you remember the one Heart of Glory? The one where there was those renegade Klingons that wanted to go back to the past and back to the Klingon Empire?
Yeah.
Now, they had an opportunity that they missed. If I'd been the writer, Worf would have gone with the three, and they would have disappeared into space and wreaked havoc for a while. And that's when
Well, Worf wouldn't have done that. Like,
but that would have
honestly,
been
he's not-
more interesting. That would have been more entertaining because Worf wanted to be a true Klingon.
Yeah, and he never really had the chance. He had like family. Yes, he found out that he had a long-lost brother, and then he had a chance to really be a part of the Klingon system through his family.
So, I would have.
But he actually used that to move politically forward with
and
the
that
Klingon.
was good. That was good. But with a few episodes, we could have had it where Worf finally rejoins the Enterprise after realizing this, violence and everything isn't working. I've already taken out a whole bunch of other races.
So let's talk a little bit less about Next Generation. Let's talk a little bit more about the original series.
Yes.
Which episodes really just kind of stood out?
I loved the Doomsday Machine. That was riveting. That was a fantastic one.
Well, they had a
That was
psychological
and it did
issue too.
It did, yes.
For
Captain-
those who
Captain
haven't
Decker's-
seen it,
Well, the premise of that, the Doomsday Machine was like this big long cone
Yeah, code.
machine that destroyed planets and then would digest a few. After it destroyed a planet, it would eat it for fuel.
oh,
And
was a
so
super
Captain
weapon, yeah.
Decker's ship was destroyed by this thing. So psychologically, he was so fixed on destroying this thing that he kidnapped the Enterprise for a second attempt because
Yeah, that
his
was
crew
excellent,
was wiped out.
yeah.
His ship was destroyed. So that had a little psychological point to it. And of course, he can't destroy this thing, so he ends up feeling guilty for surviving. Surviving his
exactly.
guilt, and he kills himself to join his crew.
Yeah.
Because he just couldn't handle losing his crew, his ship to this machine. So that had a psychological point.
And
of view
that
to
was
it, I
very
think.
good. The other one was about, I think it was called Amok Time. I'm not sure if that's the end.
Yeah, that's the title, Amok Time, the one with Spock having the mating season.
Yeah, that was
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
riveting. That was excellent and well acted, and just the cinematography. It was like, this is fantastic writing.
Yeah.
Who came up with this?
well, it's so interesting about like how some actors can portray such one somewhat dimensional characters, because Spock, you try to add layers to a character who's not supposed to express emotions, and you get someone who can be very bland and very just like
Yes.
it's very hard because it's like he's just like, oh, you have to be logical.
That's probably the price they had to pay,
It
every
is.
7
Yeah, it
years.
is. Yeah. Just unbelievable. It was
For being
well
so
done.
logical, and then 7 years they just lose it,
Ironically, this is going to sound weird. It's not like I'm rooting for bad guys, but I think the best actor on Next Generation was the Q, whoever played the Q.
Oh, Q?
He was
Yeah.
very malevolent.
The
That
reason
was
why it
good
works is
acting.
because he was I guess the term nowadays is meta, because he kind of poked fun at the series while also being in the series. He kind of like poked fun of the order
Exactly.
things. He was basically chaos.
Yeah,
in a intergalactic I don't know, spirit form thing.
Exactly,
He
he was.
can pretty much do anything.
Yeah.
With all those powers. How about that one when his powers were stripped from him?
Oh,
Yeah, that was
an excellent
interesting.
one. That was an excellent
And all
one.
the enemies that he made, they start coming after him, and Data was his
Boy,
advocate.
that was an excellent one. But like, there's one episode and I want to see how they miss opportunities that had me, when I was first seeing it, tearing out my hair. I loved the episode. Do you remember when they had this guy, this alien, this just guy who could do transwarp speed, and they ended up in 2 other galaxies? They went so fast through the cosmos, they ended up through 2 other galaxies and ended up in a 3rd.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, that was one. They had this companion called the Traveler. The Traveler was with them and helping this person who was doing transwarp theory. They ended up past 2 galaxies into a 3rd, or 1 galaxy.
And it would have been like years before they could get back to Earth if that
Yes,
happened. Oh,
yes.
I kind of vaguely remember that one.
That was a good one, but they said, if this works, we can send let's go back home. If this works, we can send a pure science vessel. They had the opportunity for a couple of seasons to explore in that 3rd galaxy and get completely lost with all new aliens. And then at the end, maybe as a cliffhanger, go into that fascinating dimension where all thought enters reality. That would have been a lot better, because they just traveled through known space. The whole idea is to go boldly where no man goes before, not safely in territorial space where there are a bunch of star bases.
Right.
I mean, if I had done the Next Generation, I would have had them at the farthest star base and just go out from there.
Yes,
into all
I agree on that. Like, the Next Generation definitely dove into a lot of political stuff.
Yeah.
And it was just like whether or not they should or should not do certain things, because they're walking a very thin line, and that's what made the Next Generation so compelling, is that they always just walk a line of whether or not they were going to do something that would save people or kill people. Like, it was always like, you never know what happened, and a lot of things about the Next Generation was just like, not every ending was a happy ending.
Well, that's true. I liked that.
And it's like, it's reality. It's just like, and then of course, with the original Star Trek, a lot of times it's just like, well, once that mission's over, well, back to exploring some more stuff.
Yeah, I kind of like that of the old one.
That's the interesting thing, is like, not too many Star Trek original series had too many overarching story plots, while had the Next Generation where they inserted like the Borg.
Oh yeah.
And that was the first time, like, I think in a lot of series is where they had an overarching theme, like a background character kind of like growing, because like in the original series it's like, oh, there's the Klingons again, pew pew pew.
Yeah,
it's like,
fascinating.
got out of here. In this series you had like, oh, the Klingons may have new leadership, which means we might go to war.
And that was.
And they had to build to that.
That was good. That was good.
And then there was other episodes where, that's the nice thing about the Next Generation, is that it totally refined the storyline, because it also had a lot more time to work with, because it kept on being renewed for seasons. But with the original series, there's always a bunch of like, it got very formulaic. It was very sitcom. It was like, oh, there's a situation, let's solve it. Okay, it's solved. Move on to the next episode. Well, the Next Generation, when you had Jean-Luc Picard, when he was captured by the Borg, he was just like, oh no, I'm captured by the Borg.
That was a very good.
And then then he left the Borg, and he was just like, oh, the Borg really messed me up. I better go home to Earth and hang out.
Now that was good. That was good.
Well, and then you got to learn a little bit more. It's like, Patrick Stewart really drove the show. He was a driving force for the show, and he was always just kind of like, it was his family, but at the same time he kind of kept that at a distance, like a professional courtesy. And then a lot of episodes where it was just kind of like, where Jean-Luc Picard really let the people in. Like, he had that kind of like nuanced romance with Crusher.
Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah.
And then he had the annoying little son, Wesley Crusher. But that what allowed a lot of kids to get into the series, because it's like, oh, he's a kid and he's smart, but also it allowed anybody who was a kid at the time, like myself, to kind of like understand like how you can be a part of something like this, because it wasn't just a crew of like explorers. It was also a crew of like families and units of people, and you can have many dynamics. And I think that what brought a lot of people into this is because the people who originally liked the Next Generation, not the original series, liked the Next Generation because it was very family oriented about what it means to have a crew, and also finding the similarities between having a ship of brothers in arms, as you like to say, versus like a family unit.
Interesting. Well, but did you feel an emotional connection with Star Trek: The Next Generation? I didn't. I had an intellectual one. I enjoyed it because it's on. The only thing that drives me crazy about BBC America, they've caught so many good scenes from Next Generation that help it make a lot more sense.
Yeah.
If there's a Next Gen marathon on Channel 176 BBC America, I'll watch some of it, but if it's a boring episode I don't like, I'll go to something else. Or
But it did seem like the emotional connection that you were kind of looking for is you want something that's thrilling and exciting.
Yes, I do.
But a lot of times with the Next Generation, it was very empathetic. You had to find the empathy behind the series. It was like, oh no, you lost your parents. It's like, oh no, I don't know what it would be like to lose your parents.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
And then there's episodes where it's just like, oh, a single parent unit where you have Worf taking care of his kid because his wife was murdered, or actually not really his wife, but his I guess his lover. Because there's a weird dynamic between that.
I remember that.
Because it's so interesting to kind of it's like when you're going over to seas, it's kind of like hard to be like a lot of army wives and all that stuff. That kind of similarities between some people were doing other things while you're doing this thing. And it's like you devote your life to Starfleet or this and that.
Yeah.
And the nice thing about the Next Generation, it kind of made it easier because there was such a big ship and allowed more people to be on there.
Yeah, it's interesting, but I just want an emotional connection with the thrill. This is totally off the subject. Do you remember the horror movie Aliens? An alien?
No, let's not talk about aliens. Let's talk a little bit more about we're talking about Star Trek. I can see that you're trying to get off topic.
No, I'm not. I'm just trying to say. Well, I'm not really trying to get off topic. I'm trying to say that had a plot and characters, but it was very emotional.
Yeah.
The Star Trek series, the first one, had that same kind of thrill. Yeah. It was that same kind of writing, and you didn't know what was going to happen next. I kind of felt that.
You do agree that the Next Generation did have some thrills, like with the Borg, and then there was that giant battle.
Yeah.
Then you had. I remember Data. He was commander of the ship, and then there was a guy that was under him. He's like, "Why did I have to listen to you?" And then Data was like kind of showed anger.
Yeah, that was good. I like that.
He's like, "Do it." He's like,
I like that a lot. I like that a lot.
And the guy was like, "Oh, I guess you're right." I was like, "Of course I'm right. I'm Data."
That was good. That was good. But it's just Star Trek, the first series, just had a lot more emotional connection, for me, and a lot more depth. And a lot of times you didn't even know what was going to happen next.
The Next Generation definitely had its spectrum. It had a spectrum of emotions. It had comedy. It had drama. It had, independence, hard work, working together, finding out solutions. And there's always another option because. The nice thing, even in Star Trek, the whole the genre of things is that the one thing that they've always explored is that there's always a third option. It's not always just black and white. There's also another option to figure out how to deal with the solution.
Yeah, that's interesting to hear you say that. Like that episode going back to those Klingons of the past, and so. The Klingons in the past didn't realize that the Klingons and humans were together. They thought it was a trick.
Yeah.
So what they did was they put Worf in the captain's chair.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah,
make them realize. You remember that episode?
Yeah.
And then when they were still attacking, this is a trick.
So, it was so interesting because the original series, they never really touched upon the inner depth of the Klingons. It was more just they'd fight the Klingons, but they only really started talking about Klingons as potential allies in the movies. Later in the movies, the last of the movies is basically where the Next Generation left off.
It is, yeah.
It's maybe 20, 40 years after the fact. And then, of course, you get the new Enterprise, and then you have a Klingon working on their ship. It's just one Klingon, and then you find out later on that the Klingon was actually raised by humans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it's
fascinating. Yeah.
And of course, and I really like the episode where Data finds his father.
Because I remember that
I didn't care for that. I didn't care.
Okay,
I remember that
the thing I got from that episode is about legacies. It's about between a father and a son, and of course his children was all about making robots, and he wanted to basically supplement himself in the form of Data. Data, a robot who initially is immortal. So in a way that is his way of granting immortality is creating a kid, and that's what a lot of people. And even today's can kind of relate to is who's going to carry on my legacy? Who's going to carry on the family name and that kind of stuff? And Data, in his own right, it was carrying on the family name. And I think in the series, he was 20, 25 years old. Just like the robot itself, he was built. He was. Of course, you build him as a baby and then he grows up. He just built as is.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I thought that was a very interesting, thought-provoking episode, as well as something that's between a father and his son.
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
The only do you remember? don't you feel that the acting on The Next Generation was a lot more restrained than in the first series?
No.
In the first series, they were always screaming. Like, do you remember the one where Captain Kirk was losing his mind?
Well,
and
it's like you're listening to indie rock music versus screamo.
Yeah, and I prefer punk rock versus indie because there's a lot more screaming in punk rock.
Yeah, punk rock is all it's all, there's screaming. But what about just music where there has a bunch of screaming at all? It's just like it gets rid of the rock and just like emphasizes the scream.
Well, I guess what I mean is the.
What about the like I understand like how you really like punk music.
Yes.
For sure. Well, don't you? Isn't there like songs in punk music where they just like they're really just like into the music, but then they slow down for a little melodic part of it?
Yeah, and I don't like those.
They don't like the melodic parts where it's like really just kind of like everything just kind of like chills out for a second.
I don't. Yeah, that drives me crazy. Now, with punk rock music like Social Distortion, that was all melodic, and it wasn't screaming, but it really had a depth to it and a beautiful guitar riffs. Okay, that was different. I love Social Distortion.
Because it's like it sounded like very melodic, and I'm not saying like nice Asaph just playing piano in the background of a punk song. I'm thinking about like something that's like really sick licks from a guitar, or it's just like where everything's like
Kind of like that.
And then you have a guitar in the background that goes.
Yeah, that drives me nuts. Like with heavy metal. That sometimes happens. I go and that drives me crazy.
Well, you need to start from somewhere. A lot of ways, it's like you want to you don't want to start like at a high level. You want to start like with any like songs or any episodes of Star Trek. It's like you want to start off with like wow.
Well,
Klingons.
okay. That scene in Star Trek 4, would that song fit in what you're talking about as far as the style of music? The movie Star Trek 4 with the punk rocker?
I don't remember that one. Oh, are you talking about where the whales?
Yeah.
I love that
I'm not talking
movie.
about the movie. I'm just talking about that scene.
I love that movie.
song. That song that punk rocker was portraying. Would that fit into what you're talking about
Maybe.
musically? Okay, I was just curious. That's all. That was kind of a amusing scene, is what I call it.
There's always that episode where they have to go to modern day, where they go back in time and they have to go to where the world was as it is, as we see it today. And it's just like, oh, we got to dress in regular clothes, like cool.
Yeah.
What episode? I think The Next Generation did that, but I think it was I think it was a very interesting. I think okay. Let's talk about the technologies from both sides, because I understand that there were a lot of technologies based around the original series, and that was like the communications array. You like you had video conferencing where you had the video of people talking. Now we have Skype and that kind of stuff. So some of the modern innovations that really kind of like was back in the day, especially like cell phones, like the advanced walkie-talkies. But nowadays cell phones are even better.
Exactly.
The walkie-talkies where there's like they just open the thing. It's like
they
can talk to you because you're up in the sky, which is easy because we have satellites now that basically bounce our signal to other people around.
That's
That's
true.
all they have to do, and it's so much easier now. Is like if they have a ship up there, it's easy just to communicate down here. But of course, we haven't discovered a way to like leave an atmosphere without like burning like thousands and thousands of gallons of jet fuel. It's almost impossible. Like you can land, that's fine, but leaving is completely like impossible unless you have enough fuel. So it's usually a one-way trip.
Well, like back to the drama and not being able to figure things out. Do you remember the original series episode where Captain Kirk seems to be losing his mind at first and snapping at the crew? Then he orders the Enterprise into Romulan territory. Then the Romulan ships, and then Mr. Spock says Captain Kirk is irrational, he is not sane, and he starts screaming and Captain Kirk has a fit. And then Mr. Spock uses the Vulcan death grip, and if you've never seen the episode before, Captain Kirk is dead. No, the Vulcan death grip, because Captain Kirk says, "You traitor, I'm gonna kill you," and then Mr. Spock puts his face like this, and Captain Kirk falls dead.
Wow.
There was instantly the Vulcan death grip. If you had never seen that and you had to use, and you had to get called away from something, you don't know how this ends. Is this in the end of the Enterprise crew? Is Captain Kirk dead?
Yeah, but see, the purpose of that was he was just pretending to be insane like that.
He was, yes.
Because the Romulans had the cloaking device that can turn their ship invisible and make them hard to be found.
Exactly.
So they had to go into that section of space to hijack that cloaking
new
device.
cloaking device. That was an excellent one because I didn't know how this was going to end, how this was going to turn out. That was real good, like screaming acting without being reserved. I'm feeling upset today. I need to go see Deanna Troi because I'm snapping at the crew. Why am I doing all this? That would have been Next Generation instead of just being full-throated. I'm emotional.
But when you watch that episode, it's very clear the plot line tells you that it was a pretense. And there is no Vulcan death grip.
There isn't one. Exactly.
They did that to fool those Romulans into thinking that.
Exactly. And I wouldn't, if I had seen that for the first time, I wouldn't have figured that out. One episode drove me crazy about The Next Generation. I turned it off all the time. It was such a simplistic plot. Captain Kirk went to see a girl somewhere on a planet to get an artifact because he likes getting artifacts. There was this Ferengi who said, "Where is the disc? Where is the disc? You should have it." And I need that, and it was such a simple plot, I had to turn it off. I had that already figured out.
I don't remember that one.
I had that already figured out. The Ferengi was going to go to the Enterprise, there was going to be
Well, with any series, there's always a bunch of those episodes you just cannot watch.
I know.
Because I remember, like...
Or even remember,
there's so many weird episodes, but there's always the same theme, time travel, political walking the line, doomsday device.
Yeah.
And then there's episodes where just like at the end, all their minds get erased.
Yeah,
you know, there's always that episode where just like, it's like, we gotta remember we're not supposed to do this kind of thing, and then they blank their minds. It's like, hey, what's going on? It's like, I don't know what's going on.
Now, some of the other spin-offs, I think Star Trek The Next Generation was the best of them next to the first episode. It wasn't a spin-off. It was I know, it wasn't a spin-off.
The whole idea of a spin-off is that the spin-off has to happen while the series is ongoing.
Okay, that's true. But it was
if you're just talking about the next...
Yeah, The Next Generation had a bunch of spin-offs, which is Deep Space Nine and Voyager.
And, of course, Enterprise.
Oh, Enterprise came about a little bit later after all those series kind of ended.
Yeah, I did not like Deep Space Nine, Voyager, or Enterprise.
Yeah, they tried to be so much like The Next Generation, because they basically Voyager and Deep Space Nine was around the same time as Next Generation. And The Next Generation was already so popular with so many fans out there.
I know. I was disappointed in those series. Very disappointed. And it was even more politically correct than Star Trek The Next Generation. And Voyager
like Deep Space Nine was awful because they were on a base, like the whole time.
I know.
And people would come in and just like hang out and just like do things, and then eventually like the wrong ship would like dock and try to like take over the base, and it's like, what's going on, guys? It's like, okay, you settle down. It's like, okay,
I know.
I guess we won't take over your base, man.
I know, it just drove me crazy. Now Voyager had an excellent plot where they were stranded way out in the galaxy and couldn't get home for 76 years. They didn't do anything with it. There should have been a lot more fascinating aliens.
Well, the Voyager should have been a lot more like the original series.
It should have been.
They were in undiscovered countries.
Exactly.
They were like so far away from what have you.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's okay. So back to the technology, and which really brings The Next Generation is like The Next Generation had so many stories surrounding plot lines such as the holodeck.
The holodeck.
The holodeck was like one of the best things. Is because they could pretty much go anywhere. They had the Sherlock Holmes episodes.
Oh yeah.
Those were pretty interesting for sure. There were a couple episodes where like somebody who's get too immersed into it. What's his face? I can't remember his name. The guy who was like obsessed with it. Who he was so nervous around real people that he could only.
Oh, that was Lieutenant Barclay, wasn't it?
Yes, Barclay.
Yeah. He drove me
okay.
crazy.
I like that in a way because it wasn't really about his character development. It was kind of like the horrors about how some people can be disconnected with one another to a certain point, about how people can be so dependent on technology.
That's a good point, but
that's what I thought about when I watched that episode. It wasn't about him just coming to his own, because I thought that was kind of like
Exactly.
But when it would come to the point where he was so reliant on these, he was addicted. It was about addiction.
Yeah, but I keep asking myself, with all Starfleet training, why did Starfleet Academy even allow Lieutenant Barclay to pass the exams? He was so malcontent and so angry with the rest of the crew and couldn't get along with anybody. He should have been thrown out of Starfleet Command or not even pass the Academy exams.
Yeah, but he was a brilliant officer, if his character, even though it was...
There's a lot... You gotta understand that if you have a large crew of people, it's always, you gotta understand there's always some people you can't get along with. And I thought it was very interesting because, with the original series, is that the crew, they already knew each other so well, they always got along. At some point, there was a lot of respect for one another, and it was very just like militaristic. But in this one, it was in the Next Generation, it was more like a family unit, where it was more like figuring out like just like why people were having so much difficulties with one another. Because
that's true.
They even like it was it got to the point where like Jean-Luc Picard his number one, he was just like a yes man. He was his right hand man, but most of the time he was a yes man. And once in a while they'd throw a woman at him, and he was basically like Kirk, but with Jean-Luc Picard over him. So a lot of ways this Riker, William Stryker, Riker, he was Kirk, but with the Jean-Luc Picard overseeing him.
Yeah.
That's what they tried to do so much. But then they ended up just kind of pushing him kind of to the side.
Yeah.
But if you remember in the first season, Riker was kind of like very Kirkish, where he'd get with the woman, and he like it was violence, and then Jean-Luc Picard was like, "Oh, I'm your dad."
Yeah, no. There was one episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation that I love. Two of them, if I can mention this.
It's when they beamed him up, and then there was a weird split, and it was like a copy thing. That's how they explained it.
That was okay. They had that on the original too.
Because he had a secondary, William Riker. He had another William Riker, which is like stuck on a planet.
I don't remember that one.
Oh, then you're thinking of a different episode than I was.
Well, no, the episode I remember where they split, and
that was
in
the
original
series,
one, they beamed Captain Kirk up.
That was
from this planet that was bitter cold, and it split him in half.
Yeah,
so
I remember
good
that.
Side was
no, this one was just a complete
You're
copy.
not talking about that one, okay?
The William Riker, when he was beamed up, they made an exact copy of him.
Okay.
One was stuck on the planet while he was beamed up, so it was like basically a duplicate, a clone.
Oh, I see.
Wasn't that Jean-Luc Picard who was beamed up and he was the commander testing? Okay, I didn't see that one. But two episodes I really liked. Did you ever see the one called De-Evolution?
Yes.
There was this one. It had Lieutenant Barclay, but
and then he had Worf. He became like a giant,
yes, that was a very good one.
That was pretty thrilling. For sure.
I liked that. I had an emotional connection with that one.
And then of course, you had Jean-Luc Picard, who wasn't affected by it because it wasn't like in cryo or something.
Yeah, he was. Yes.
Then when he woke up, everyone was just like de-evolved and weird looking. Data was just like, oh.
Yeah, exactly.
Data was like a Walkman or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
No, but he was fine. Yeah. And the Data was just like, use your instincts to figure it out, and it's just like, oh yeah.
Well, this has been such fun. We have 10 minutes left.
There was one other episode I loved. Was one of my favorites. It was the one where they intercepted aliens from another dimension that started abducting the Enterprise crew for medical experiments. The whole ET abduction scenario. That was very good, and they were in a room with aliens that were experimenting on the Enterprise crew. One of them was killed because his blood was turned into liquid polymer. It was a very, very scary episode. It was very good, very well done. That was based on the UFO abduction thing. I can imagine that happening in deep space. So I liked that one a lot.
Because when you discover a new alien, you want to dissect them. You want to figure out what makes them tick, where their heart is, where their organs are, all that kind of stuff. It's interesting how you think about the human race, how it was back in the day. It's like they were so interested in even when they explored new countries, diseases were very prevalent, and they really did touch upon that with the Next Generation when they did have diseases. They had issues. It's like, we go to all these weird planets. Of course, you're gonna get sick from something.
You are.
Oh, you got the Vulcan flu.
Exactly. Do you remember the one?
You get a Vulcan transmitted disease.
Do you remember the funny one where? Oh, I laughed my head off. This is one of my favorites. One, I can't even remember what it was called, but it was a fistful of datas.
A fistful of datas?
Was the holodeck, or they did go back in time?
The holodeck, where Alexander wanted his father to be in a Wild West adventure on the holodeck. That was funny, but then the holodeck safeguards were off because data was being reprogrammed.
because there always has to be a safeguard off.
So then it turned out that they were in real danger on the holodeck from the Hollanders. It was that was a good episode and a funny one.
What I really liked about one of the holodeck episodes is when Moriarty from the Sherlock Holmes episode. He was really smart and maniacal, and he was able to step inside the Enterprise without disintegrating, because that's what happens when a hologram leaves the
yeah.
holodeck. But when he left the holodeck, he did disintegrate. But of course, later on in the story, you find out that he actually was in the holodeck, and he tricked those people because he had ultimate control of the holodeck.
Yeah.
And then they ended up throwing him and his lover in a box, and they threw him into space.
Yeah.
And
I
like
don't
a mini
remember that
hologram
one.
program thing is so interesting about.
Yeah, I don't remember that one. Yeah.
That was one of the interesting holodeck episodes. There's always got to be an episode with a certain character, and I think the one character that was really just kind of like, I guess, wronged in a lot of ways was Geordi. Geordi was always kind of he did a lot of episodes, yes, but he was never really emphasized as much as he could have been, and a lot of his character was like underdeveloped.
That's true.
Are there any characters in the original series that were underdeveloped in the series?
In the series, let's see. I'm trying to think.
You think Geordi's character was underdeveloped, huh?
In a way, yeah.
Let's see.
He was
Who
the
else?
engineer.
What about the boy, Crusher?
Oh, yeah,
Crusher
Wesley had
was
too
he?
much.
Okay.
Wesley had a lot, and he saved them a lot of times, more than anyone could count. And what happened with him is that he ended up going to Starfleet for a little while.
I remember that.
And then there was a huge scandal, which I thought was really cool, is that how they went to Earth, and then they dealt with like a political scandal and stuff like that. One of my favorite episodes is when there was an alien that would be inside. It was kind of like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, but with, when they got him back to Earth, and it was like one of the leaders was like
that was
taking
very
control.
good.
And
that
was pretty
very good.
Scary for sure, because
That
it's like,
was one of my favorites. Yeah.
and then there was another episode, of course, when Wesley was in the academy, and he did something really stupid, and he was trying to cover it up in a ways, and then at the
I remember that episode.
remember
yeah.
and then
that
at the
one.
very end, he's just like, okay, I have to tell the truth. And there's, like his other students were just like, oh, I want to be in Starfleet. I don't want to leave Starfleet. And
Yeah.
Wesley's just like, I'm just gonna leave Starfleet. I just can't do this anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That was very good.
they did a maneuver that was supposed to be forbidden, from
Yeah,
what I
it was,
understand,
yeah.
but
Because
it
it was
would have been
dangerous.
grandiose if
Yeah.
they had succeeded, and someone was killed in the.
Yeah, definitely. I think Yeoman Rand in the first series was not very much developed. The yeoman that was of what's his name's McCoy's assistant, the nurse Chapel. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Nurse Chapel was underdeveloped.
Was she the blue with the blonde hair? She's the blonde.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
I
but
She was a blonde.
Yeah, she was the one who actually married Gene Roddenberry in real life.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, she did.
Nurse Chapel was underdeveloped. I
Her
thought.
name was Majel Barrett.
I think she got.
Majel Barrett, something like that.
Yeah, she was in. Well, that's interesting because like the med bay and all that stuff. It was
Yeah.
always just like as a reactive type of deal. It's like more a reactive episode where like when something bad happened, they go there and then something happens. But of course, wasn't Bones very prevalent in the series?
He was very good. He was fantastic.
Yeah, he was.
And then
in
the
fact,
Chekhov.
Yeah, he was very good.
Chekhov was very integral in the series because he was basically based on, like, if you want to be more like political correctness, it was like during the Red Scare, during the Cold War.
That's true.
Chekhov was Russian, and so that in its own sense had its own version of political correctness. And they did.
Well, I don't know about
they did attack the boundaries for sure.
That's what I liked
It's got
about
the
that.
interracial kiss.
That's what I liked. That's what I liked.
Even though they didn't really emphasize it, like it wasn't even a romantic
Yeah,
kiss.
that
it was
one
just,
I liked.
No, they
kissed.
were forced to do that.
Yeah,
because of, those
the
aliens,
the aliens are.
So it wasn't. It was so weird because if you really think about it now, since it was so forced upon them, people at home who were watching it who didn't like the idea of interracial kissing were just like, well, they were made to do it, so I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess white people are safe for now.
uh-huh.
That's how I would think as a white person
But
at that time.
speaking of white people, the episode Half Black, Half White.
Yeah,
did you
that
see
was
that
very
one?
good.
What was in original
In
series?
the original, yeah.
No,
What
I
it
didn't see
was
that.
is the I like the plot line. The ones that were black on the right side didn't like the ones that were white on the right side. That's basically what that was about.
That was
And so it was dealing with racial issues. At
It was
the
so
time.
that's so weird. It's like, well, yeah, I'm black on this side, but you have to be white on this side.
Yeah,
if you
they wiped out their race because it was the message, because they didn't like each other because they were different. And that's still relevant today if you think about it.
Yeah, it is.
Oh yeah, it totally is.
So
Well, like people were just like, some people were just like,
I don't like you because you speak funny to me, or
like it's like
it's
like
crazy.
you know, it's like what you want your kids to look like. It's like, I want my kids to carry on my legacy. I want my kids to look like me, so I'm not gonna be with someone who doesn't look anything like my race. And all that stuff. It's so weird.
It is.
I think I've said this 1,000 times. Racism is the stupidest thing.
Is.
It's completely made up. It's completely just like like a fantasy.
Yeah.
It is.
It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's all about it's vain. It's just vanity.
It is.
Yeah. It's all based in vanity.
I don't care what color person is or creed or
they can be black, they can be white, they can be orange.
Yeah.
I look at like if Kathleen Kirk can make out with this green lady, then we ought to be able to get.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
Green, Klingon, which is essentially like I don't know what the Klingons would be like in terms of.
I don't know.
But that's so interesting because it's like the Star Trek dealt with a lot of like racist and racial issues.
That was good, you know.
And I mean, I guess we'll never really. There's a lot of good gems on either side of the original series and the next generation.
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
And they'll be constantly making new series and new episodes.
Well, they got a new series come out in 2017.
I know.
Based on the '60s version, but it'll be more fancier. So we'll have to wait.
Well, you got so many people who are invested in it, and you know that they're not gonna get it wrong because you had Star Trek Enterprise, which was on UPN, which no longer exists.
Yeah.
No, don't get it right. CBS has it this time.
Oh, CBS. Okay,
CBS
so they're gonna definitely work with it really well. But if it doesn't work out with CBS, they'll probably just throw it to the CW. Because I know the CW is like UPN and WB channel combined into one.
Yeah.
Right.
So and the CW has a lot of really good shows on there. Because CBS just lost Supergirl.
I saw that. That was strange.
They moved that to CW, which it's no big deal. It's crazy. Like it still goes on, it's still happening, and they introduced Superman. Which
I saw that too. I haven't seen it.
Which I honestly think that Superman is way better than the new Superman, Man of Steel, who's just all brooding and just like depressing looking. Because Superman is supposed to inspire people to be upbeat. Just in like personality wise, upbeat personality, but of course be just better in general.
Yeah, and on Network I hardly watch, and I didn't even know they had a new Superman series.
Well, it's not Superman, it's Supergirl.
It's Supergirl.
The show's called Supergirl, and it really follows about. I really like the show because it really empowers women, but also it doesn't really depower anyone else. It just it helps bring up everybody. While at the same time really emphasizes what it means to be a woman in today's era.
Interesting.
And on that, you'll have to say that for another debate because we're almost out of time. Scott, is there any last-minute things you want to say?
Star Trek The Next Generation is something that I definitely grew up on and definitely something I hold very close to myself.
Okay.
Yes, there's a lot of, like with a lot of series that has a lot of episodes, there's a bunch of crap and there's a bunch of gold. But you got to figure out a way how you can connect with anything that you see and you watch. You can't just like watch an episode and be like, oh, boom, mic in the shot. Yeah. So you gotta be a little more forgiving when it comes to the technicality, especially. Versus then, based on CGI and all the special technology.
Emmett, any final things you want to say?
I like some of the episodes of The Next Generation. I love the marathons that they have, but I hate the fact that BBC America's cut so much. But I still love the first series with Captain Kirk as the best. And for everyone, live long and prosper. And remember, spinning in a dryer is fascinating.
And on that note, I am Asaph Adonai. This is Asaph Cafe. We had fun with this fun little debate, science fiction debate.
It's fascinating.
Which is a better series, Star Trek, the original, Willam Shatner, The Next Generation, and Scott represents The Next Generation, and Emmett, the original Star Trek.
I hope no ladies are watching.
What?
And a lot of fans have been having this debate since Next Gen premiered, and was in the first season. This is very common,
Well, and just one more plug. I'm in a play at MCT, and we're doing A Christmas Story, the musical, and I suggest you guys go check it out when it comes out in the beginning of December.
Cool. That's cool. That's a good way to end the show. So we hope you've enjoyed this. We have Scott Ranf here, the host of Wake Up Missoula, and affectionately our aging rocker Emmett. Until our next show, Maranatha.
Live long and prosper. Fascinating. Yeah, I'm trained for this. I've been doing this since I was a little kid.
Can you do the scissors?
No, I can't. But I can just do this. Yeah.